Hello and welcome to my channel, and today we are going to talk about the little 10-year-old killer girl, named Mary Flora Bell. In 1968, an 11-year-old monster named Mary Flora Bell made headlines when she brutally murdered two young boys in Newcastle-upon-Tyne. It all started very early. Betty, Bell's mother, worked as a prostitute and frequently traveled to Glasgow for business. When she was 16 years old, she gave birth to Mary, her first child. It is unknown who Mary's biological father was, but for the majority of her childhood, Mary believed it to be Billy Bell, a convicted felon and chronic offender who had married Betty after Mary was born and was later incarcerated for armed robbery. According to unconfirmed family members' reports, Betty made several attempts to murder Mary and have her death appear accidental during the first few years of her existence. Mary claims that her mother forced her to do sex acts with men when she was 5 years old, and that this amounted to recurrent sexual abuse. Bell was up in Newcastle's Scotswood neighborhood, which was plagued by domestic violence and criminal activity. Her prior crimes, including assaults on fellow students at school, vandalism, and theft, did not draw much notice as a result. She also had a reputation for being a show-off, thus her declaration that she was a killer was rejected. Martin Brown, 4, was suffocated by Mary Bell on May 25, 1968, the day before she turned 11, in a deserted home. This crime was thought to have been done by her alone. In the interval between the first and second murders, she and her companion Norma Joyce Bell, then 13 years old, broke into and vandalized a nursery in Scotswood. They left letters inside the facility claiming they were the murderers. This incident was written off by the police as a joke. On July 31, 1968, the two participated in the strangulation death of 3-year-old Brian Howe on a waste area in the same Scotswood neighborhood. According to police investigations, Mary Bell later returned to his body to use a razor to shave a N into his stomach, which she later changed to a M using the same razor and a different hand. Howe's legs were scratched, his penis was cut off, and Mary Bell cut off some of his hair with a pair of scissors. The specifics of what occurred have never been totally established since the girls were so young and because their accounts conflicted. Martin Brown's death was initially given an open judgment because there was no proof of wrongdoing. Despite the fact that Bell had strangled him, her hold was not strong enough to leave any scars. After Brian Howe's murder was eventually connected to his, the two females were accused of manslaughter on 2 counts in August 1968. Mary's claims were rejected since the boy had an alibi. He was at the airport the day before Brian was killed. Mary, however, implicated herself by bringing up the pair of scissors, a piece of evidence that had not been made public. It was becoming obvious to the police that either one or both of the girls was responsible for the homicide. An investigator was watching Mary on the day Brian Howe was laid to rest as he was standing outside the Howe's home. The detective was terrified to witness Mary giggling and rubbing her hands together as she watched the casket emerge. He determined that something had to be done right away to prevent the death of another kid, so just before Brian's funeral, he asked Mary's friend Norma Bell some more questions. The police were able to pick up Mary right away thanks to Norma's account of what happened on the day of Brian's funeral, even though both of their accounts would evolve over time. Mary admitted to killing Brian and even took the woman to the abandoned house to see the body later. Mary claimed to have liked strangling him and explained how she had done it. When Mary was questioned by the police once more, she acted evasively and made no confessions. She argued that Norma was lying and trying to get her into trouble while refusing to provide a statement. Mary was first let go, but after further details were given, she was taken back into the station and eventually acknowledged being present when Brian was slain. Nevertheless, she placed the entire guilt for the crime on Norma. But both females were taken into custody and given homicide charges. New information and evidence came to light both before and during the trial. 2 days after Martin Brown's body was discovered, a nearby nursery school was broken into and vandalized. There were 4 unsettling letters and a room full of school and housekeeping supplies. The crudely scrawled notes were full of vulgarity, but what was more alarming were the murder-related remarks, one of which began, "We did murder Martin Brown." Another person uttered the words, "I murder so that I may return." Additionally, it was revealed that Mary had been heard by other kids yelling, "I am a murderer," and pointing to the home where Brian was discovered, "That's where I killed." But because Mary was a noted tall tale teller, no one took her assertions seriously. Mary made a number of bizarre remarks to the prison officers when she was detained, including "I like hurting little things that can't fight back." Psychiatrists classified Mary as psychopathic due to her lack of empathy, her lack of responsiveness, and her odd behavior. It began to make more sense as family members spoke out about the abuse Mary had experienced as a youngster as to how a small child might develop into a violent psychopath. Based on the psychiatric evaluation that was submitted at trial and the evidence of diminished culpability, Mary was found guilty of manslaughter. It was said that she would be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, which essentially meant that she would be imprisoned indefinitely. Mary would temporarily break out of the adult prison she had just been moved to nearly 9 years later, in 1977, but she was immediately apprehended. Despite this, she was freed from prison in 1980 after only 12 years of incarceration. She had a 23-year-old age. She was allowed anonymity so she could begin a new life with a different name. In 1984, Mary gave birth to a daughter. Given that she had killed 2 children, there was a lot of debate regarding whether or not she should be allowed to keep her child. Mary was able to keep and nurture her daughter, nevertheless. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more killer documentaries. Let me know which killer you want to see next.